She laughed out loud. Oh, yeah. But don't worry, Chrissy, I'll help you. I paused and asked quietly, why? Why? Because. She sat on the edge of her bed. You're a good guy, scratch that, you always were a good guy. Always a really nice, friendly, compassionate, nice guy. And to tell you the truth, I always thought it was a shame that you weren't a little more butch? Macho? I wiggled my eyebrows. Male? She giggled and then sighed. Yeah. I would have been attracted to you, maybe. There was an odd moment of communication and shared loss for something that never was and never could be. But when you started talking to me at the end of school, I just felt really comfortable with you. I didn't know why. She frowned and then asked, I wonder if the stuff was already working on you then? Oh. Of course it was, and that's why, remember, the first thing we started talking about was the Evermore concert, and you were talking about the fun we girls must have had. That's not a boy thought, nice guy or not. Yeah. I didn't know it at the time. I mean, it was sincere, but I think it was, well, Chrissy talking. She nodded. That's what I'm thinking. Take away the fact that I know you're a boy, or have been for however many years, and I just get a nice comfortable girl vibe from you. I did when we started talking and a lot more, now. So that's partly why I'm helping you. Girls like to try on different clothes with each other. And to be brutally honest, there's an X-Files kind of fascination to the whole thing. She shrugged. And maybe you're just my big Barbie doll and I like to play dress up. She grinned. Thank you, I said. I mean it. I'm going to need a true friend to get through all this. I only have 2 friends, Craig and he's gone, and Tommy, and they're going through it, too. There's your mom, she said gently. Tonight I'm telling her, I hope. It's just been her darned work schedule that I haven't told her. I haven't even seen her for a couple of days. And I didn't know as much to tell her as I do now. Hey, can I tell my dad about this? Jenny held up her hand. Not with names, of course, but he's got a lot of knowledge about that conspiracy stuff and has ways of digging deep for information. It might come in handy for you. Okay, I said, thinking that it might be a good idea. Hold off on names, but once I've told Mom and checked with Craig, or Lisa, I'll give your dad details. She nodded and we had a comfortable moment, and I suddenly realized I was still holding the panties. I said, Jenny misunderstood. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll take them back. No, it's not that, it's just, well, I should try them on. I looked around for a bathroom. Oh. Down the hall and second door on the left. I took 2 steps and froze, staggered by a thought. If this is too weird, let me know, okay? You said, girls like to try on clothes with each other a while back, and I've heard that girls change clothes in front of one another. She shrugged. Sure. Yeah. We do it all the time. Go to the mall, cram ourselves in the fitting rooms and try things on. Or in our bedrooms. Her voice trailed off. Oh. She smiled warmly. If you trust me that much, Chrissy, I'm honored. I nodded and took a deep breath. Cool. And you've got a choice, and this is super, super weird, but do you have any interest in seeing what's left of me? It took a moment before she got it. Yeah, if you trust me. I grinned to ease the awkwardness. Hey, I let you touch my boob, didn't I? She giggled. Sure did. But what the hell, we're all girls here. The enormity of those 4 words. I let the cargo pants slide to the ground. It seemed like, and it was probably true, my waist was narrower, my hips wider, and my legs more slender than they used to be. But I had on the boxer shorts that I didn't like, the last boy remnant. I preferred tidy whities, but last year Craig and Tommy had said they were for little kids, so I'd switched to boxers. Taking a deep breath, I let the boxers slide down. Jenny let out a little gasp and quickly said, "Sorry." Is that like before?" I looked down at the tiny, shriveled penis, about 2 fingers width long, with a curious detachment. I was never a stallion, but no, it's smaller. It was larger this morning, and it was larger than that the day before. "Are you documenting any of this?" God, what a moron I've been. Oh me God. I never thought, and I got a digital camera. I've got one if you want to start right now. You can email the photos to yourself and we'll wipe them off this camera for security. But you've got to document this. You said it's moving fast, day by day, and nobody's going to believe it without some evidence. I hope Craig's documenting it. I'll have to ask him. Jenny picked up a shiny blue camera from a charger on her desk, held it up and gave me a direct look. "You're okay with this?" "I've got one at home, but the way things are going, I might be even smaller by the time I get back." So, yeah. It was so strange to be so casual with her, with me standing naked below the waist, my puny little manhood dangling. Jenny, bless her, was all business, clinical like we were in a doctor's office. She handed me a ruler as she said, "This camera time and date stamps. Your camera probably does, too. You might want to get a shot when you get home and see if there were any changes in however long it is between shots." Then she sat on her vanity bench. I stood before her and delicately held my penis, extending it to its full and pathetic length, with the ruler next to it. She shot from different angles and I sent a silent prayer, "Lord, don't let anybody walk in right now," because it looked way kinkier than it was. "Got 'em," Jenny said, studying the little screen on the camera's back. She put the camera in the charger cradle and fired up her laptop. I took the moment to tuck my little penis back and pulled the panties up, leaving a smooth, clean mound. Just like any other girl's. It looked so good, and so natural, that it took me a moment before I realized, yeah, my penis was small, but where were my testicles? They'd been there, last time I'd looked, which was, I couldn't remember exactly. And now they were gone, maybe up inside me, maybe actually gone, with my penis soon to follow. All of this passed in a flash and then I was back to smiling at my smooth mound, just like any other girl's. Jenny hadn't noticed my startled discovery. She smiled. "Looks good, babe. You're getting curvy, too. You're going to be in a bikini before too long, and the guys will." She looked stricken. "God, I'm sorry. I just get too comfortable with you as a girl." "Jen, it's cool, really," I said to calm her and me. "A bikini? And boys?" Craig and I have already compared notes and we're both, well, let's just say that we seem to be turning into heterosexual girls. "You mean, oh." She grinned at the thought. "So boys checking you out in a bikini isn't such a bad thing." I looked her in the eye. "I hope they will." She smiled happily. "We're going to have such fun, Chrissy." It was a warm smile and a warm moment we shared. Her laptop dinged. She murmured, "Okay, shots up." She pressed some keys. "What's your email address?" I gave it to her and watched as she attached the photos and sent them. Then she deleted her sent mail with the JPEG images and deleted the uploaded images still on her computer. She removed the camera from the charger unit and wiped the memory and grinned at me. "Now you have porn in your mailbox." I laughed with her. "Yeah, but I can always say you sent it to me." No, you can't, she said, seriously. Well, yeah, the email's from your computer. It's in your email address as sender. Her grin was like a Cheshire cat. No, it's not. You think you and Craig are the only ones using an anonymizer? I told you my dad knows about things like that. He set me up with one that I've never used. But from what you've told me about these guys, it made sense to use it this time. God, you're brilliant. I hooped and impulsively reached down and hugged her. Then we both realized I was standing there in panties and Jenny raised an eyebrow again. Ahem, you might want to think about putting something on. Oh, do you want to try? I smiled. A skirt? Yes, please. Might as well jump in the deep end. She smirked. Well, it could be argued that a bra and panties was the deep end, she laughed. Actually, I was going to suggest shaving your legs, not that there's much there. It's better in a bath, but there's a quick way. Come on, she said, leading into her bathroom. I started after her automatically, while part of my brain was screaming that I was wearing a bra and panties and camisole like it was the most normal thing, while another part of my brain was calmly saying, get used to it. Jenny's bathroom was every bit as feminine and lovely as her bedroom, only in pinks. She folded up a towel and laid it on the edge of the tub. Okay, what I do is I sit there and shave sometimes. But Mom's got some nair, so get comfy and I'll be right back. Oh, feet in the tub. She left and returned in an instant. Here. Reading improves the mind, she grinned as she handed me a 17. She stopped herself. Oh. Raise your arm? I did, elbow up. She rolled her eyes. I mean, I want to see under your arms. I didn't see. I'd raised my arm towards the ceiling and she peered at my armpit. No, not armpit, I reminded myself. Guys have armpits, girls have underarms. Somehow I was fine with the idea. Jenny said, next to nothing, but... She opened a cabinet and took out a small electric shaver and grabbed a tissue and turned back to me. Think I can do it in one. Hold that position. Placing the tissue under my arm, she turned on the shaver and didn't really touch me with it, but I could hear a hair or hairs caught by its blades. She caught them in the tissue. What I thought, she murmured, mostly to herself. Just wisp wisp here, wisp wisp there, she sang goofily, to the tune from The Wizard of Oz. She tossed the tissue in the wastebasket and replaced the shaver. You can do a better job at home, but the cami looks better now. I mean, if you have to raise your arms. Be right back. Grinning, she left the room. I was thumbing through 17 when she came back with a bottle. You want to do it or me? I'll do it, you supervise, I said, setting the magazine aside and holding my hands up. She squeezed a dollop of the goo in my hands and I rubbed it in as she directed. Then she murmured, here, and turned on her handheld shower unit, holding it away from me so I could rinse my hands. She turned off the water and handed me a towel and I dried. 4 or 5 minutes, tops, she said. If it burns, tell me right away. Don't tough it out. In an innocent voice, I asked, don't be macho? She snorted a laugh. Yeah, right. Then her face clouded and she sat on the toilet seat lid. Chrissy. Yes, Jen? I asked gently. I'm kind of being all bossy here. I just realized. It might seem like I'm using you. I joked about Barbie a while ago, and I don't want you thinking that. I don't think that, Jen, I said in the same soft voice. I always liked you. Jenny leaned quickly and put her hand on mine. No, let me say it, she said. I always liked you and I hope that you can be a really close girlfriend. I want to be your friend, Chrissy. I nodded. As long as we both know that we're not talking about boyfriend-girlfriend. I'm pretty sure I'm turning into 100% girl, and forever, and I know I'm going to need a friend, but I hope you'll be my closest girlfriend. She squeezed my hand and nodded as she beamed. Hope so. She nodded sharply once. Good. Rinse time. We did the thing again with the handheld shower. I held a towel up high over my crotch as I sprayed and then, standing, finished rinsing and used the towel I'd been sitting on to dry. She told me to blot, not rub, and then handed me some baby oil. I smoothed it on and was amazed at how smooth my legs were before I put the oil on, and especially after. I washed my hands, turned the shower off and wiped everything down and dried off. I am so jealous of your legs. Jenny grinned. Come on, babe. Without commenting, I followed her into the bedroom as she pulled a typical denim miniskirt from her closet and explained the ways of getting dressed in skirts as I pulled it up. She nodded and then grinned. Ooh. Wanna go all the way? She waggled her eyebrows. I'm not that kind of girl, I said, airily, and giggled. She had turned and spun back with a pair of brown sandals with a short heel. I nodded and took them, strapping them on. She smiled as I walked around, giving me hints here and there. God, Chrissy, you got fantastic legs for heels, and you're not even all the way there yet. The sandals required a different walking technique, and with her help I got the hang of it quickly, walking out of her room and up and down the hall. She was in her room doing something and suddenly burst out of her room and headed down the stairs. Something's happening down the street. I think it's Tommy. I ran after her as quickly as I could. She was about 10 feet out from the door, looking down the street, and I looked the same direction as I came up next to her. It was Tommy's house, with an ambulance and police cars. I gasped and cried out, "Oh, God," and took 2 steps to start to run to his house. Chrissy! Jenny hissed and reached out, grabbing my arm. I stopped dead in my tracks, suddenly aware as Jenny had realized that I would not help the Donahue family by running up in a miniskirt, strappy sandals, and a pretty camisole. I've got to change. I blurted and turned to rush back into her house. Wait! Look! Jenny pointed. We stood there, shielding our eyes against the sun, watching the scene unfold. The paramedics were wheeling a gurney out of the house. That's what Jenny had seen, and we couldn't tell who was on it. But then the police followed them holding Tommy's older brother, his arms handcuffed behind him. He wasn't resisting but seemed proud and defiant. Jenny and I looked at each other, our eyes wide. I glanced around, conscious that I was dressed as a girl on the street, and saw several other families standing in their yards watching the Donahue house. Nobody paid attention to me, and I looked back at the drama. An officer came out of the house, slowly, writing something and talking with Mr. and Mrs. Donahue, who walked beside him, nodding and pulling their coats on. Oh, God, it's Tommy! I gasped, knowing who was on the gurney. The ambulance took off. Tommy's brother was in the back of one squad car, and the officer gave a paper to Mr. Donahue, got in the car, and the police left. Mr. Donahue looked somehow smaller and beaten, I realized. Beaten down not by fists, but by his own prejudices and their results. They got in their family van and drove off. I had tears in my eyes and Jenny was trembling, her arms across her chest, rubbing her upper arms. Jenny said, "You've got to, oh, God, you've got to tell everybody now. Not just your mom." I know. I've got to find out what's happened to Tommy and tell them, because all by himself they'll never believe him. We went back in her house and up to her room. I changed, reluctant to shed the clothes and put on my own. Jenny noticed. Tell you what. I'm going to put all those in a day pack for you. Everything, shoes, undies, all of it. I think you'll need them. Need them? I asked, sliding out of the bra and automatically crossing my arms over my breasts. Uh-huh. To show your mom, after you tell her, maybe. And if you go to the hospital, if you can find out about Tommy. I nodded. God, thank you, Jenny. I can't believe how. I shook my head. I just can't believe it all. Me either, she agreed, then grinned. And I was just about to put some makeup on you, too. Oops, barrette, she said, plucking it from my hair as I bent over to pull up my cargo pants. She went to her closet and came back with a blue day pack and began collecting everything into it. The thought of makeup shook me but made me smile, too. Jenny came behind me and began brushing my hair back into my boy's ponytail as I buttoned my shirt. I turned around and we hugged. It was two girlfriends hugging, nothing romantic, but it felt warm and supportive. Jenny set her jaw. Step 1, tell your mother. Step 2, get to Tommy. Step 3, coordinate everything with Craig. You might have to just check the whole anonymous email thing and call him. Step 4, bust this thing wide open. Step 5, I guess. She sighed. Be my friend? I am already, Jen. Your girlfriend Chrissy. I smiled back at her, hugged her, took the pack, and left for home. June 21st, evening. Mom came home about 20 minutes after I'd gotten back. I'd unpacked the things from Jenny, shaking out any wrinkles. I saw that she'd tossed the barrette in along with the brush and a little sampler of makeup she'd probably gotten at a department store as a freebie. I teared up at her thoughtfulness. I sent an email to Craig, not anonymously. I wrote, Tommy's in the hospital, I think he's been beaten up. I was pretty sure it was his brother but didn't want to commit until I knew. I'm going there tonight to find out as much as I can. The doctors will run tests and the cat is going to be out of the bag, so probably don't apply anymore. I'm telling Mom tonight. Email me back with details so we can talk on phone, what number, how late, whatever. It might be really, really late, or tomorrow morning. But things are definitely heating up. I added a postscript, leaving out anything about Jenny. I just now thought about shooting photos of myself. I could kick myself for not doing it sooner. I hope you've been photo documenting yourself all along. Mom arrived, and as soon as she'd gotten her things put down, I braced her. I'd been thinking about how to do it, and I knew the only way was full and immediate disclosure. Mom, are you hungry? I said after hello. Not particularly. We had a late lunch. You can eat if you'd like, and I'll just fix something for myself later. She looked at me oddly. What's wrong with your voice? My voice? I remembered that Jenny had said something about it. It sounds kind of. She shrugged. Different somehow. Well, I haven't talked to you in a couple of days, she smiled. Maybe I just forgot what you sound like, or you're coming down with something. I thought, she has no idea. Mom, I have some very, very important things to discuss with you, and I think this is a three-pipe problem, I said, using an old Sherlock Holmes saying. She'd introduced me to Holmes 2 years ago and I loved the stories. A three-piper, huh? She grinned. A pot of Earl Grey, then. She went to prepare the tea and I had to stop myself from pacing. I was still gathering my thoughts. When we were at the kitchen table with 2 steaming cups in front of us, I began. Mom, have you looked at me lately? Really looked at me? Have you noticed anything? She tilted her head. Well, your hair needs a trim, and, I don't know, maybe you could start exercising more. You're looking kind of. Her voice trailed off. At some point her brain had kicked in and went from the casual observance to, as I'd requested, really looking at me. Oh, my. She said. I have a lot to tell you, and it begins in April. Please don't, well, it'll go faster if you don't interrupt. Oh, here, I said and slid a notepad and pen to her. I just thought of it while she'd prepared the tea. You might want to make notes or jot down questions. She frowned, seeing how serious I was. So I dove in, as I had with Mrs. Donahue and Jenny. I was really glad I'd had the practice of telling the tale twice. I went from Craig's first idea to the Donahue family racing to the hospital. I had printed out my email exchanges with Craig and some of the things we'd found on Intellia and Black Hats, and gave them over to read after I was done talking. God bless her, Mom didn't interrupt. Several times she frowned and opened her mouth to speak but closed it and scribbled instead. When I finished, she looked directly at me, saying nothing, then nodded. I think now is the moment we knew had to come, honey. I nodded, too, and leaned back to unbutton my shirt. I kept it closed until it was completely unbuttoned, looked her in the eye, took a deep breath, and let the shirt fall around my shoulders. Mom couldn't help the reflexive gasp at the sight of my breasts. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide, and then she nodded. Honey, she said, choosing her words slowly as she went. I think you should put on the things that Jenny loaned you. I'm going to sit here and read my notes and think and... She blew out a breath and grinned weakly. Definitely a 3-pipe problem. I was slightly trembling as I dressed in my bedroom. It was a very simple procedure, actually, and it felt comfortable and it felt proper and it felt so right, somehow. I stripped completely naked, it just felt better starting from skin out. Then I remembered Jenny's comment about documenting again when I got home, so I grabbed my digital camera and a hand mirror and quickly documented myself. I even used a ruler. Then I stepped into the panties, tucking my little boy bit, pulled on my bra and smiled at the nice support. I pulled the camisole over the mounds of my breasts again, then pulled up the skirt and sat to buckle the sandals. The thought occurred to me that what I was just doing, getting dressed in these types of clothes, was how I'd always be dressing in the near future. I leaned over and brushed my hair out, then quickly brushed it into place as Jenny had and used the barrette. I decided to forego the makeup, then decided just a bit of lip gloss was needed. I took my deepest breath of all and went to show Mrs. Hanson what her daughter looked like. She stared and then nodded. It all fits, she said calmly. I turned side to side, looking down at my clothes. Well, Jenny and I turned out to be the same size. Mom chuckled. No, sweetheart, I didn't mean the clothes. Although they do fit you nicely and it's a perfect look for you. Her face clouded for a moment. Perfectly normal look for you, now, I suppose. No, what I meant was, well, you've been a little secretive the last few weeks. And that's normal for teenage boys. Realizing that she meant boys and masturbation, I blushed. I'm not, I haven't been. Mom waved a hand. No, I just mean at first I didn't pay close attention. But then when you came to me tonight, before you started telling me what's been happening, that's when I noticed that things didn't quite fit. Your voice, for instance. Jenny said something about my voice, too. What's wrong with it? She smiled. It's probably been so gradual you haven't noticed. But your voice is. She tilted her head and frowned slightly. It's higher but not higher, and it's thinner but not thinner. It's also not younger. She shook her head. That's a lot of things it isn't. I'd have to simply say that it's become a girl's voice. Before I might have said that you sounded like you did a few years ago, but that's not quite right. I think what's happening, keeping in line with the theories you and Craig have come up with, is that your larynx has been altered by the girl bomb. And that's a funny name but pretty accurate, like a bug bomb. Yeah, that's what Craig was thinking about the name. So I sound like a girl? I'm not trying to. Well, your speech pattern isn't like a girl's, yet, but that's a cultural thing. Her eyes widened and she sat up a little. My God, that explains a lot. What does? Well, the other thing that didn't fit and does now is how you move. Everything, the way you walk, the way you hold your things, the way you move your hands. It might be considered effeminate, but that's not quite right either. See, effeminate should probably apply to A. Let's just say typical instead of normal, okay? Anyway, a typical male trying to seem like a girl will have a certain walk and gestures, but they're approximations of feminine movements. They're a mimicry. Without what you're looking like now, the way your body has already changed. If you walked and gestured like that, you'd seem effeminate. But you don't. It's not mimicry, it's not an approximation. You have a feminine walk and gestures because you are feminine, you are a girl, or at least pretty far on your way there. That makes sense, I guess. I'm not trying to do anything, like I said. I shrugged. I just walked, that's all. But you said a cultural thing. Mom nodded again. Girls have a lifetime of being girls to pick up things unconsciously. She grinned. Or in response to their mothers harping on them. Just thinking about my own girlhood. A memory brought a chuckle. You don't have that, but you'll pick it up quickly. For instance, you wear that skirt beautifully. You look very cute in it, very normal and regular and all that. You walk perfectly for a girl in a skirt. I'm guessing that your pelvis and bone structure is becoming more like a girl's, so that makes sense. But when you sat in your skirt, you sat in your skirt. No girl does that. She automatically reaches back with a hand and smooths the skirt forward as she sits so it doesn't bunch up under her. I said automatically, because it's learned behavior, from her mother telling her to do that and all the other girls around her doing the same thing. And it would be the same with a mother telling her daughter, keep your knees together so the boys can't see your panties and things like that. Learned behavior, I thought about it, it made perfect sense but was worrying. So I can learn these things, but will they take years to learn? She shook her head. I don't think so. Mothers constantly remind their little girls because they're little. Everything takes repetition, like how to go potty properly and on up. The learning curve is long because they're just growing kids. It's different now that you're older, you're still growing, of course, but your thinking is more mature. For instance, I probably won't need to remind you more than a couple of times about keeping your knees together or sweeping your skirt when you sit. I think I'll remember. Because you're older, she nodded. So your cultural girl lessons will be picked up very quickly, and naturally, too, I'll bet. Because you're already. She did the head tilt thing again. You're already a naturally feminine and very pretty girl, and you're still evolving. Weird way to think of it, evolving, morphing, maybe. I trailed off and frowned. Mom, Jenny's theory about my DNA being changed or reset. I wasn't sure how I was going to put it. You mean that you're becoming the girl that you would have been, almost like an alternate time track? That startled me, the science fiction reader. I like that. Yeah, in my girl track. Don't say yeah, sweetheart, girls say yes, she said with a twinkle. Sorry. So, you'll teach me? All the girl stuff? She grinned. We'll have to work on your girl vocabulary, too. We don't say stuff as much as boys do. But, yes, of course I'll teach you. It's a mother's job to teach her daughter. I found myself rushing to hug her. She enfolded me in an embrace and kissed the top of my head. Mom, you believe me, then? How can I not believe you, my darling daughter? I pulled back from the hug. Two things, one quick and the other not so much. The first thing is, did you have a girl's name picked out for me if I'd been born a girl? She smiled with some sadness. Yes. And a funny thing, too, because, well, the one thing we decided on was that the word Christ would be in your name. Your father was. She trailed off. I knew she didn't like talking about my father. At the start of this journal, I wrote about him being a salesman now and having been in a supermarket. When I wrote that, I was just getting started and still kind of embarrassed about writing things down. And that pales in comparison to what I've had to write down, so it's time to document the truth about my father. He'd been a butcher at a local supermarket and became a born-again Christian, leading a worship service and quitting the market and becoming a lay minister. Mom was an old-fashioned Christian, the type that didn't need to shout hourly about her faith. She said she didn't have to, she just knew. But then my father was caught fooling around with one of his flock, then another woman was discovered and maybe more, and he resigned and divorced in disgrace. I think Mom was more angry about his hypocrisy than his unfaithfulness. Mom picked up the thread. Your father wanted Christ in your name. I just wanted faith in your soul, so I went along. Nothing wrong with it. But I did put my foot down on his first choice Christian. I thought that was just too much over the top. It's a fine name, but with him it was a billboard. So we settled on Christopher, a saint's name that satisfied him. Well, former saint, but that's neither here nor there. She smiled at me. And if a girl? Christina. I am not making this up. She held a hand up like an oath. So you would have been Christina, or Chris, or Christy, or Chrissy, thank you, Jenny, or even Tina. Strange how it works out, huh? I hugged her again. So you don't have a problem with Chrissy? None at all, my sweet Chrissy. Although I might call you Chris every so often. That's okay. I'll know that you mean it as Christina, not Christopher. I squeezed her and broke the hug. The second thing is, I want to go to the hospital and find out about Tommy. She nodded. While you were getting changed, I made some calls. First of all, I called around and we're in luck, he's in St. Joe's. That's where Mom works. His condition is stable and he's conscious, or he was when I called. So if we have a chance to see him, we've got to hurry. Oh. Yeah. Okay, I said, feeling the urgency. Let's go, can we? Please? Mom pursed her lips. Yes, we can, but... She looked at me and tilted her head, that thing she always did. Honey, I know you just got changed, and you're so pretty, and I know that you're going to be dressing like this from now on, but just now, for tonight I better change back. You're right, this would only cause more problems with Tommy's dad. I quickly went back to my room and regretfully changed everything, furiously brushing my hair back into the ponytail and rubbing off the gloss and putting on the boy clothes that I'd so happily gotten out of only half an hour ago. On the way out of the house, I grabbed the printout from our emails, just in case. And they just might be needed, because Mom told me that she'd made some calls, and one of them was to Dr. Paulson, who was going to meet us at the hospital. June 21st, night. We got to St. Joseph's quickly because there was so little traffic. St. Joe's is a big rambling old hospital, more saint elsewhere than ER, Mom says. I have to take her word for that, I'd never seen those old shows. Anyway, It is a really good hospital and is the main trauma center in this part of the state, so a lot of times you hear on the news about injured people being airlifted to St. Joseph's, and sure enough, even as we parked, a helicopter was coming in to land on the fenced area on the side of emergency. Since Mom worked there, we moved quickly through while she greeted people left and right, and she came to a nurse I knew from occasional meetings, Nurse Rawlings. "Nancy, hi, what's the news on Tommy Donahue?" The nurse looked pretty grim. "Pretty rough. He's been cut up and beaten badly, not something we don't see on weekends, but he hasn't been in a bar fight." "I don't know everything but," she sighed, switching to her professional voice, "multiple contusions and lacerations, left jaw fracture and possible left orbital socket fracture. The main thing was the cut at the groin. He lost a lot of blood and it was touch and go there for a while. Defensive wounds on both hands." Defensive wounds?" I asked, my voice strangled with grief. Nurse Rawlings said, "Often when a victim has been knifed, they fight their attacker and get cuts on their hands. Whoever did this had it in for the kid. There are some other lacerations that are just rage." "What about the groin wound?" Mom asked. "Apparently whoever did the beating." She broke off and looked at me. Mom said, "You can say anything, Nancy, please speak freely." The nurse nodded. "It looks like the victim was nearly castrated. He'd probably twisted this way and that to avoid the knife but got multiple lacerations all around the pelvis." "And his penis?" I asked. Nurse Rawlings gave me a compassionate look. "Don't know. I'll get an update soon. You look like you know more about this than I do." Her eyes searched our faces, back and forth. Just then we were approached by Dr. Paulson. I've already written that he's been my doctor like forever, and he's a good guy. As he's gotten older, he's looking more and more like a TV version of a doctor with silver in his hair and a fine, deep voice. "Ruth, Christopher, hi." "Nancy," he nodded. She nodded and smiled at us and turned back to her duties. Dr. Paulson said, "Now, what's so important that you pulled me away from Dancing with the Stars?" It was the kind of light-hearted thing he'd say. I don't know if he watched it or not, and I don't think tonight was even one of the nights the show was on. It was just a fun thing to say. Mom looked at me and said, "There's a very serious tale we have to tell you and time is of the essence." That's such a cliché, but it's true. And it also involves two friends of Chris, including Tommy Donahue, who was just admitted after being knifed and beaten by his brother. His light manner vanished. "Is he still in emergency?" We shrugged and he turned to the nurse's station. "Nancy? Could you give me an update on Tommy Donahue, and I think Jack Warren is his primary?" "Thanks." He turned back to me and said, "Fancy a pee?" He'd said that to me for years. It used to make me chuckle. I knew it meant he wanted a urine specimen. "Yes, doctor," I said, seriously. "And you should draw blood." I was going to, he smiled. "And however you check DNA. Is that the cheek swab thing?" "One way, yes," he said, frowning. Are you taking something, Chris?" I made a face. "Taking, no. Given, yes. That's what we need to find out, and fast. It's not poison, but time is of the essence," Mom finished for me. They gave me a cup and I went in the little toilet, filled the thing, came out and sat for the blood and DNA swabbing. Dr. Paulson had told me that they actually can get DNA from blood and urine as well as saliva, hair, and so on, and he was going to have all 3 samples run because whatever I was worried about was genetic. I know he has a lot of respect for Mom, and so he didn't treat me like a strange kid. We were back at the nurse's station, the tests on their way to the lab. Dr. Paulson was studying a chart, frowning. I figured it was Tommy's chart. Before we said anything, there was a shout behind us. You! We turned and everyone else and Mr. Donahue was red-faced and pointing at me. He yelled, "You've done this to my Tommy. You've turned him into a fairy. This is all your fault." Mrs. Donahue was next to him, tugging on his sleeve and frantically hushing him to no effect. He took 2 steps towards me. "What have you done to him? What have you done? He trusted you. And you turned him into a fag just like you are. My God, look at you. You're more girl than boy. But you had to do it to my Tommy, didn't you? All of you slap." Mrs. Donahue had stepped in front of him and slapped him so hard his head turned sideways and the crack of the slap seemed to bounce off the hospital walls. "Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!" she cried. "For God's sake, Mickey, shut up! You have no idea what you're talking about, just lies and filth from your own dirty mind. You're blaming poor Chris here for what you did to Tommy. Your hate and your ignorance have poisoned our children for too long, and Patrick acted on it. Sure, he took a knife to his own brother, but it was you that guided his hand. Catherine, you know, that's not it." "Yes, that's exactly it. When I married you, I fancied your bluster. You were the big strong man that could protect me and my family. But I've watched you get smaller and smaller with your meanness and it's nearly cost me my children." "Enough. Catherine, Shut up, I said. Now, and until you're told to speak." As shocked as I was, I couldn't help but have a huge boost in my estimation of Mrs. Donahue. She was no longer the meek and mild dutiful little woman. She was on fire. Security arrived and she stepped forward to tell them everything was under control. A doctor came out in scrubs, and Dr. Paulson said, "That's Tommy's doctor, Jack Warren. He's a good man." "Jack. 1 minute?" He indicated the 2 of us to the doctor, who veered over. "Hank," he nodded. "What's up?" "Don't have time, I've got to talk to the family. You might want to let them cool down a bit. Listen, this is Christopher Hansen, a long-time patient. I haven't heard his story yet, but I think we both need to be present because it bears directly on your patient Tommy Donahue. There are some anomalies," Dr. Warren said, looking at me. "And you can shed some light?" "Yes, sir," I said with a firm nod. "And also the probable reason for the attack on Tommy." "There were 3 of us," Dr. Warren frowned, confused. "3 of you in the attack?" No, I think that was his brother." "No, there were 3 of us affected." "Infected," I said. Dr. Paulson said, 3? "You didn't tell me that, Chris." "Yes, the other is Craig Wesson, a friend of ours. The 3 of us hang out together." "Well, we did, but he moved away. His dad got transferred, but we keep in touch." Dr. Paulson nodded. "I know Craig quite well. I was also his doctor until they moved." "Really?" I said, brightening. Do you know his new doctor?" "I know the doctor I recommended and transferred files to. Don't know if they've met her yet, it's only been a couple of months. They should like her, but they might even have switched to somebody else." "Dr. Paulson, could you contact his doctor?" "Craig's new doctor, I mean? Because if she's seen him, we can have some, what's that word? Mom said, corroboration?" "Yes, thanks. We can have corroboration of what I've got to tell you. I know there's a time zone difference, but it's really important that you talk to her." Dr. Paulson frowned slightly. I can try, but we're going to run into patient confidentiality problems. If I call Craig and get his family to okay it? He stared at me. It's really this important? And this urgent? Yes, sir. And especially for Tommy. He held his look on me a little longer and then nodded and looked at the other doctor. Jack, go update the Donahues. I'm going to my office and make the calls young Chris is demanding. I'm not demanding, Dr. Paulson, I said apologetically. I am, Mom said. Hank, this is important and especially for your patient, Dr. Warren. Both doctors nodded and went off in two separate directions. Mom hugged me with one arm. I'm so sorry you had to hear those hateful things, she said. They were hateful and totally wrong, but he did say one true thing. I guess I am more girl than boy. She leaned down to my ear. And a very pretty girl, too. She quickly kissed my cheek. We watched Dr. Warren talk to the Donahues, who listened. Mrs. Donahue nodded, but Mr. Donahue was frozen like a statue. I noticed that Mrs. Donahue asked the questions. After the doctor shook hands with the stunned Mr. Donahue and slightly bowed to Mrs. Donahue, he came back to Mom and me. This is going to get a lot more complicated before it's settled. I just updated them and also got Mrs. Donahue's approval to talk about Tommy's condition with you. Excuse me. He leaned over to Nurse Rawlings. Nancy, would you prepare a confidentiality disclosure authorization for the Donahues over there? Patient Thomas Donahue. Thanks. Dr. Paulson came back with a very strange look on his face. I just talked with Craig and his family. He was expecting something like my call because of an email you sent? I nodded. That was a good thing, so it didn't take much time. They had a very interesting story, too. Something tells me I'm going to hear it again. They've approved my talking with their doctor. They've just seen her yesterday, so we have the full workup still fresh. And they're faxing an authorization. Dr. Warren said, I just got the Donahues to agree to the CDA for Tommy. Mom said, we'll sign whatever you need so all doctors of all parties can talk freely and fully. Thanks, Ruth, Dr. Paulson said, still frowning. It was the oddest thing. The whole time I was talking to Craig. He shook his head. No matter. We're going to go into a conference room and open up the phone. I think the Donahues should be present, too. If he's calmed down, Mom said. I think Mrs. Donahue has control now, I smiled. Too late for poor Tommy, though, Mom said grimly. June 21st evening we were all in conference, and quite a mob, too. Mom and I and Dr. Paulson, Mr. and Mrs. Donahue with Dr. Warren, and she was still keeping Mr. Donahue under tight rein, and Nurse Rawlings, who I'd found out was head nurse, and two suits, one male and one female, who were administration. Mom whispered that they were attorneys. There was also a representative for the police, a Latina with dark short-cropped hair named Sergeant Rodriguez, and for some reason I liked her immediately without even knowing why. She wore a crisp blue uniform with one of those little black shoulder walkie-talkie things, and somehow I knew she was not only carrying a gun but knew how to use it. She had to be good to be a female sergeant at a relatively young age. There was one of those star-shaped conference phones and even a video hookup, and we'd be joined shortly by Craig's new doctor, Dr. Sarkeesian, who was a darkly handsome woman in her 50s. That was when the video popped into life and we were all present, with Craig's family on several phone lines. There were notepads and pencils at every seat and water glasses and carafes of ice water along the table. I felt like we were part of the United Nations. Actually, I kind of felt out of it. The long day was catching up to me. Had I wandered into the library only half a day ago? Mom noticed and told me to lean against her and doze if I could until it was time for me to make my presentation. The flurry of getting things went on without me as I kind of shut down, recharging, sort of. Then it was showtime. There were introductions all around, and we had Craig and both his parents and even his sister on 4 separate lines at their home. Something was tugging the back of my mind and I couldn't think what it was, and then there wasn't time for thinking about it. When Craig introduced himself, I was shocked. I suddenly remembered that Dr. Paulson had said something about the whole time he was talking with Craig, and I knew exactly what it was. Craig's voice was a girl's voice. That was proven when Teresa introduced herself. There was enough similarity that they were unmistakably sisters. I thought of Mom's thoughts about the cultural differences, and Craig didn't use words like a girl would, but the pitch and the whole feeling of his voice was female. This was proven when I said, "Hi, Craig." "You, too, huh?" he chuckled. And of course, it was almost a girlish giggle. We're sopranos now and we're not even mafia. Looks were exchanged around the room. I jumped in. "Craig, do you want to tell the whole room the whole story or do you want me to do it?" "Tell you what? I'll tell it first. You've already told your mom and maybe some of the others so they'll be familiar with it. Then you can throw in anything you want. I think it'd be good for my family to hear you tell it, too." It was agreed, and before he started, he asked for an email address or FTP site to upload his photos. Good old Craig had been shooting photos from the start, and he was given the address and also one for a video feed. Nurse Rawlings made a call and a second computer video hookup was wheeled in halfway through Craig's story. He told it clearly and cleanly and factually. I thought he was very even-handed at taking the blame for the whole scheme, and his descriptions of the men we met that night were more detailed than mine. The only thing I noticed was that he didn't mention the 3 different drinks, he just said drinks, so I interrupted. Don't know if it means anything on our end, or even their end, but for the record, Craig had Sprite, Tommy had Pepsi the full-strength regular kind and I had water. Dasani, the kind made by Coke. Cans and bottle already opened. Separate glasses with ice cubes. Sorry, Craig. Go on. It's all exactly right. He went on to tell the things I didn't know that happened after they'd moved. Teresa jumped in with her explanation of how she suspected something was very weird with her brother. I looked over at the Donahues. Mrs. Donahue was gently nodding with a slight smile. Mr. Donahue, on the other hand, looked like he'd been smacked upside the head with a 2x4, as Tommy used to say. Suddenly I wondered, had Mr. Donahue actually used lumber to beat Tommy? But now he was hearing corroboration my new word of whatever Tommy had said. My throat tightened. God, poor Tommy. Craig finished up. We went to see Dr. Sarkeesian. I really like her, by the way, thanks, Dr. Paulson, and kind of dumped it on her lap. He paused, and Dr. Sarkeesian, who'd been listening with her arms folded across her chest, her head down and occasionally nodding, said, I'll talk about my examination when it's the doctor's turns. You want to finish up, Craig? The way she'd hesitated saying his name made me flash she knows he's Lisa now. Craig said, I'm going to fire up the video feed. You're set up there? Nurse Rawlings said, think so. The tech is still here if there are problems. Okay, here it comes. We could hear some computer keys clicking and then the large screen popped into life like a big YouTube video. And we were looking at a pretty girl with long curly sandy hair. I knew immediately it was a wig but kept quiet. The girl had a light blue sleeveless tank top and, as we discovered later, a denim skirt. She wore a little bit of makeup and was just a very pretty girl. Hey, Dr. Paulson. Mrs. Hanson. Chris. Nice to meet you, said the girl, who then grinned. I'm Lisa. There was an audible gasp from several people, probably including me. I know that the Donahues were staggered. Craig's or Lisa's father then spoke, walking into the back of the camera's image of his new daughter. "This is Paul Wesson speaking." "Oh, there we are." He pointed, and I realized that the tech in our room had activated the camera so the Wessons could see us and vice versa. That strange thought tugged at me again but was lost in his words. When Terry brought Lisa to us, no, this is too confusing, I'll use names for, before and after. When Terry brought Craig to us and they explained, we were shocked and pretty skeptical. Understandably. But there were undeniable physical changes to Craig that didn't come from a tall tale, and research on the internet indicates that he'd have to have been secretly taking hormones for nearly a year for this kind of physical change. And I can testify that this girl you see here, sorry, honey, I've got to say it this way, he said to Lisa, who shrugged. The girl you see in the camera is not the girl she was yesterday, and that girl was not the girl the day before that. What I'm trying to say is that the changes are, I don't know, exponential or logarithmic or whatever the medical term would be. Just amazingly rapid. "Hi, everybody," Mrs. Wesson said, waving from the back of the picture. "What Paul's saying is that Lisa's body is changing every day. I can testify that because..." "Go ahead, Mom," Lisa said, nodding. "Well, a mother notices things." My goodness, that sound trite. "What I mean is," she broke off. Lisa said, "What my mother is trying to say is that after Terry and I showed Mom and Dad, Mom and Terry and I went into the bedroom and I was measured. And I've been shooting digital photos and sent them, have you gotten them yet? Anyway, Mom's being discreet, but this isn't the time for that." What both my parents were trying to say was that every 24 hours my body changes. Not click. Like that, but like morphing over time. So what Daddy said was right, I'm not the girl I was yesterday. My breasts weren't the same size, my penis was slightly larger. Hey, Chris, ain't this fun? Lisa leered, and I had to laugh. There were embarrassed chuckles around the room. And my bone structure has changed. I've lost 2.5 inches in almost 2 months. That's not possible. Dr. Paulson blurted out. I would have thought so, too, Hank, Dr. Sarkeesian said, but I know you take careful measurements, as do I. And Lisa is 6.3 centimeters shorter than your records of January this year. She looked into the camera. And I haven't even begun the blood anomalies. My God, what can do this? Dr. Paulson said, shaken. Lisa said, I'm swearing to you, to all of you, and Chris can take the same oath. I swear before God that none of us, me, Chris, or Tommy, has taken any kind of drug. Or any kind of weird thing at all. We don't do that sort of thing. And the fact that it's just us three, and it started only after we crashed in Telia, seems to show that that's when we got it. So maybe we were exposed to a gas or something, but there was never a time we were alone, once they busted us. The only thing we did that they didn't was have drinks. I thought it was odd they were so friendly to give us refreshments, I added. No kidding. And it explains why the guy with the beard looked scared when we left, Lisa said. You noticed that too, huh? I said. I was last in line, so I thought I was the only one to see him. Lisa said, even Tommy said to me, dude, that guy was freaked. Are you? Mr. Donahue said, broke off, and looked at Mrs. Donahue, who nodded. Wow, I thought. She's strong. He's already completely under her control. He cleared his throat. Are you sure, Dr. Sarkey, Sar? Mrs. Donahue whispered to him. Sorry. Dr. Sarkeesian, are you sure that this girl is Craig Wesson? I can't imagine a hoax, but that's a valid question, Mr. Donahue. Because of the incredible implications of Lisa's story, I also took DNA samples from her family. And they're a match. This girl is the child of Paul and Emily Wesson and the sister of Teresa Wesson. Absolutely no doubt. And, she smiled oddly, absolutely no doubt that she's the former Craig Wesson. His DNA profile is in his records, and everything matches that should match, with one glaring difference. Female, Dr. Warren spoke for the first time. Dr. Sarkeesian nodded. Yes, female. Blood, urine, DNA of hair and sputum, the works. She's a Wesson, and she's a girl. And she didn't used to be a girl, as of the middle of April, when Craig's DNA was recorded. Dr. Warren says, what could do this? What could do this so fast? Dr. Paulson said. Mr. Donahue cleared his throat. So you're saying that my Tommy was infected with the same thing as you and Chris, here? Lisa said, yes. But you're a girl with pretty clothes and hair and... Well, I've got a sister for pretty clothes, and... Lisa chuckled. Hate to do this. And she pulled off her wig, showing her Craig head, with sandy curls matted down by the wig, and it was odd because it was sort of Craig's face, but very feminine. And, of course, she had makeup. Okay? Good. I'm going to fix this. Chris, you want to take it? I cleared my throat. Everything Sierra Lisa said was exactly what happened. I had some massive diarrhea that I think was internal stuff flushing out. Craig didn't have that. Later, I did. Haven't talked to you for a while, Lisa said, back on camera with her pretty hair in place. Teresa said, I was pissed at first because she was always in the bathroom, but I got scared when it went on and on. And on, Lisa grinned. But, yeah, Chris, it was just like you told me yours was. Chunks of me. Chunks? Dr. Paulson gasped. Chunks, Lisa and I both said, and of course, we both giggled. I went on. The thing I noticed first was that it seemed to be changing my brain. The way I thought and felt about things was different. I started a journal and brought it along. I had a disc in Mom's purse. Anyway, you don't know this, Lisa. I ran into some girls we know from school and even they noticed the differences. How I looked, how I sounded, how I acted, everything. And I'm developing as a girl. I stopped and said, excuse me, everybody. I think I'm going to have to do something really embarrassing here. Right with you, girlfriend, Lisa said. Wow. That was weird. Cool, was all I said. I stood at the table and unbuttoned my shirt, looked around at everybody, and slowly pulled the shirt aside, exposing my breasts. I got the audible gasp and Dr. Paulson said, my God, under his breath. I turned slowly so everybody in the room could see, and the cameras, and then buttoned up and sat down, my head down. Mom rubbed my back. Sisterhood is powerful, Lisa was saying. I looked up, and she'd lifted her tank top to show two perky, round breasts with large nipples. Behind her, her mother said, honey. And Teresa's voice said, Mom, she's got to show them. Mrs. Wesson said, all right, honey, that's enough. Teresa giggled. Anything else, you'll need a private room. Lisa pulled down her top and said, seriously, so. Mr. and Mrs. Donahue. How's Tommy? Mr. Donahue let out an anguished moan. Mrs. Donahue sat with her arms folded, her jaw tight. Mr. Donahue began sobbing, how was I to know? How could we know? Mrs. Donahue took a deep breath, swallowed, and said in a very cold, tight voice, "My husband Michael and eldest son Patrick decided that Tommy was becoming a homosexual." This was despite anything Tommy said or did. In fact, they ignored when he pleaded with them. Pleaded. "My husband Michael thought he could." What were your words, Mickey? Exactly? That you could beat the queer out of him? I wasn't aware of it at first, and to my undying shame when I did find out I was too frightened of them to step in. I'll carry that shame to my grave. Today her voice broke. Mr. Donahue didn't even seem to be listening. He just moaned, "Why didn't he tell me?" "He did." Mrs. Donahue spat out. "He did and he did and he did, and you just yelled, 'Shut up, you fairy, no son of mine's turning queer,' and you kept hitting him." "I stopped," he roared back. I was crying, thinking of poor Tommy. Mom put her arm around me and I leaned against her, sobbing. Mrs. Donahue continued, "Oh, you stopped. Is that making it all right for you? You never gave him a chance to explain. These other poor boys are going through the same thing, and nobody is beating them. It took a big man like Mickey Donahue to do it. And then you got Patrick riled up." "Patrick," he whimpered. Mrs. Donahue faced the room, the words sour in her mouth. "Tommy took a shower today. First one in a long time. He's been hiding in his room and I've been taking food to him. So he showered and almost made it back, but Patrick saw him and started yelling. The same filth as Mickey, calling him terrible names. And poor Tommy, my poor child." She shuddered and regrouped. Poor Tommy began crying, and that sent Patrick round the bend. He ripped the towel off Tommy and saw. She sighed and paused. The whole room was silent except for the noise of the electronics. "Could I have some water, please?" she asked. Her husband sat there, rocking slightly, wrapped in his misery. "Could I have some water, please?" she asked again, pointedly, to Mr. Donahue. Oh, he roused from wherever he was, and poured her a glass. She drank slowly, put the glass down and spun it slowly with her fingertips, and then crossed her arms again. Patrick ripped the towel and I'm guessing he saw Tommy's breasts and small penis. And curves, he's gotten curvy, I'd noticed before he locked himself away. And Patrick went for his knife that he's always carrying. She glared at her husband. As if he's going to skin a moose in suburbia. Well, fine use for his moose knife. And back to the room. All I can guess is that he was going to try to cut off Tommy's penis and castrate him. I didn't see this because I was in the kitchen and it all happened so quickly, but Patrick was shrieking, "You want to be a girl? You want to be a girl? I'll make you a girl," and then finally Mickey realized he'd gone too far and had to pull Patrick off Tommy. "Oh, God," Mr. Donahue said, remembering. "And so much blood." He'd cut the femoral artery, Dr. Warren said. Tommy would have bled out, almost did, but Mrs. Donahue got 911 to dispatch quickly. We sat there in silence. I wiped my eyes and looked at Lisa's monitor. She was crying, too. I could feel Mom's steady deep breathing, the way she did when she was furious. We were all in shock. Sergeant Rodriguez said softly, "You understand, Mrs. Donahue, that I've recorded what you've told us. It's required by law." Mrs. Donahue nodded. "Yes. To my shame. And I want you to know what happened." One of the suits, the man, said, "This whole conference is being recorded. We can supply the audio tape with authorization, officer." "Sergeant," she said, but with a smile. "And thank you." Back to the business at hand. During the confession, somebody had come in softly, handed a file to the tech, and left softly and quickly. He'd handed it to Nurse Rawlings, who nodded and handed it to Dr. Paulson. He was scanning it in the interlude after the Donahue drama. Finally, Dr. Paulson looked up. "I just got the lab results for Chris. Blood, urine, DNA swabs, all less than 2 hours old." He sighed and looked at me. For the others at the table, he pointed at me. "This is the child that I've had as a patient for 10 years, Christopher Hansen." He shrugged, pursed his lips and frowned. "And yet the lab results show that this child is a female. There are some anomalies here and there in Lisa's results as well," Dr. Sarkeesian added. "Yes, we'll have to compare those later," Dr. Paulson said. He took up another file and handed it to Dr. Warren, who scanned it and nodded. Dr. Warren said, "And these are the lab results for Thomas Donahue, now in recovery." He looked at Mrs. Donahue with sympathy. "Genetically, your child is female." "Now." "Female?" Mr. Donahue said, dazed. "Female," Mrs. Donahue said, firmly. "She's our daughter now, through no fault of her own. And she's mine, do you understand, Mickey? You've done enough ruination to Patrick and Tommy over the years. Now I'll try to undo the damage with our daughter." I could tell there was nothing he could do about it, and realized it was probably the best thing that could happen to Tommy now that her mother had finally stood up to her husband. "So, what is the agent of this rapid genetic change?" Dr. Sarkeesian tossed into the room. The doctors began conferring in quick medical lingo when my brain slammed into gear. It was her word agent that did it. I suddenly realized what the thing was that had been bumping around my head. The agents. The black hats. If they were monitoring our emails and maybe our phones, they knew now that the murd had hit, as Craig used to say. "Lisa, I just thought of something," I said to the video camera. "The black hats?" Her eyes widened. "Oh, God. What do you think? What do we do?" For a split second I flashed on how Lisa was different than Craig. He'd always been the one to come up with ideas first. I pulled out my cell phone and it read no service. I asked the room. "Excuse me, do cell phones work in the hospital?" They were still all talking among themselves. I rapped on the table and raised my voice. "Excuse me. Do cell phones work in the hospital?" My outburst earned frowns, but Nurse Rawlings said there are areas with cell phone blocks because of complications with the machinery, but they work on this floor. "I can tell you where you can make a call." "Thanks, but that's now why I'm asking." "Mine's not working." "Anybody else?" Everyone checked their cell phones and I could tell by their faces that they were surprised. Even the suits were shaking their Blackberries. I said, "Check a landline." Nurse Rawlings did, punched some numbers, and nodded. I asked for the phone, used my phone's address book to call Jenny, and prayed. Thank God she answered. I quickly briefed her on where we were and said she should tell her dad because black hats might be coming. She got it instantly and we hung up. I looked at the room. Paranoid, maybe. Better safe than sorry? Anyway, do you doctors have any idea how much farther? Into girlhood, Lisa supplied. Good thinking, by the way. Thanks. So, how much farther into girlhood we're going? The doctors looked at each other, stumped. Dr. Warren said, "We can't even imagine how you've gotten this far." So far, so fast, Dr. Paulson said. Flipping, I murmured. Dr. Paulson grinned. Okay, so flipping fast. No, I said, shaking my head. Our cells are flipping. Or chromosomes. I mean, our XY cells are flipped to XX. That's all I can think of. Me and Craig, I mean. Lisa, I nodded to the screen. I didn't want to mention Jenny, for her safety. The doctors stared at me. Dr. Warren muttered, "That's not possible." Dr. Sarkeesian said, "But setting that aside for the moment, let's explore it. Can we posit that it's a genetic mutation, a stimulator of some kind, that strips the Y chromosome or flips it similar to cancer flips it into an X? We need to get a geneticist on this," Dr. Paulson said. Way overdue. Nancy, see if you can track down Linus? Nurse Rawlings nodded and made a call, then made a face because the phone was dead. I got a chill. She stood up and was halfway to the door when it opened, and in walked Military Guy and one of the bully boys he'd had with him at Intelia. Military Guy had a dark gray suit on and black sweater under it. The other guy was in a black suit, white shirt, and dark tie. Sheesh, I thought. Here come the men in black. Military Guy smiled with cold eyes. Good evening, everyone. Nurse Rawlings, please be seated. I am Agent John Turner and this is Agent Reynolds. He flipped out a wallet showing some ID card and flipped it closed. We are with the Department of Homeland Security and I am informing you that this conference and all information pertaining to the matters at hand is confidential. Excuse me, Sergeant Rodriguez said. Could I see the ID again? It's all in order, Officer Rodriguez, he smiled blandly. It's Sergeant Rodriguez and I would like to see your ID, sir. She was standing, absolutely not backing down. I knew I liked her. There was a little pause and he slowly insolently, I thought, slid the wallet across the table to her. She took it and did the cop thing of somehow reading the information and keeping an eye on him. I'd been with Mom once when she'd been pulled over with a busted taillight and saw how it was done. Sergeant Rodriguez raised an eyebrow, nodded slightly, and closed the wallet, slid it back, and sat down. The lady lawyer from administration sitting next to her raised an eyebrow and Sergeant Rodriguez gave a slight nod back. After retrieving his wallet, Turner smiled again. Thank you for your compliance. I'm informing you all, and that includes Dr. Sarkeesian and the entire Wesson family, hereby video that under the terms of the Patriot Act you are to comply with us. Don't worry, folks, it's a pretty painless procedure. First, all notes and recorded data concerning this matter are to be retrieved and handed to us. That means emails, too. And, of course, the medical records. Everything. Everything must be given to us starting right now. June 21st, evening you're taking medical records? Wait a minute, Dr. Paulson said. What about doctor-patient confidentiality? Sorry, Dr. Paulson, Turner shrugged. That, I'm afraid, takes a back seat to national security. Dr. Warren asked, what happens to the records? They will be evaluated and then destroyed, Turner said calmly. How exactly is national security involved? Asked the male lawyer. You are not required or even allowed to know exactly, but I can tell you that national security has been compromised by the break-in of these 3 boys. Mr. Wesson said, excuse me. You're telling us that 3 kids sneaking into a video game place somehow compromises national security? Mr. Wesson, Turner addressed the video camera, there are matters here that you are unaware of. I know the boys were not intentionally attacking our nation, but their actions have quite possibly endangered America. Oh. Sorry. God, I'm so clumsy, shouted the lady lawyer. She dropped her water glass and it had fallen off the table and splashed Sergeant Rodriguez, who bent over and retrieved the glass. Did any of it get on you? The lawyer asked. Sergeant Rodriguez shook her head, but something seemed to pass between them. Then I thought it was my imagination, as once the glass was replaced and filled with fresh water, they both sat with their hands on the table, quietly listening. Everybody was still reacting to the absurdity of Turner's statement. Lisa's voice cut through the din. Excuse me, she was saying. I'm sorry, with the commotion there. Didn't hear everything. Special Agent Turner, you were saying that Homeland Security wants to, what did you say? Destroy all the information about us three? Our medical records, even? I mean, for Chris and Tommy and me? Why, again? National security. The three of you have compromised national security, he said a little testily. And it's not special agent, that's something that F.B. uses. His tone was disdainful. Lisa said, so it's just Agent Jim Turner? No rank or anything? Turner was almost testy. That's John Turner, and agent with Homeland Security is all you need to know. Sorry, the audio connection was a little fuzzy. You were saying, did I hear that right? Agent Turner, you were saying that my two friends and I compromised national security? We're only 14 years old. Nevertheless, your actions endangered America. Turner was back in control just for sneaking into Intellia? Lisa said incredulously. We just wanted to find out about their new video game, Omega Chronicles 2 or whatever they're going to call it. It was criminal trespass, Craig, Turner reminded us. Then his voice turned snarky. And I understand that there's really no point in referring to you as Craig anymore, but as Lisa. That's because of whatever stuff you put in our drinks. Lisa shot back. Was it the same stuff in all three? I asked Turner. Not relevant, Turner smiled at me like a snake. And classified, anyway. Lisa said, is Intellia in on this with you, or were you using them as a front? Do they have any idea what you're doing? Turner merely smiled, saying nothing. I wanted to push Turner a little, to get him off Lisa, and I thought of the line that Tommy had said. You were working on some way of turning males into females to do what, make terrorists drop their guns and start baking cookies? He turned his grin on me and it was an ugly thing. It was blandly superior and dismissive, and yet I felt like a bug under a microscope. That's a sexist thing to say, Mr. Hansen, and I'm surprised at you. Especially because you're very nearly Miss Hansen. The grin widened. About that, Dr. Paulson said. I can probably understand Homeland Security needing to quarantine the data, but as one of the doctors involved, the health and welfare of my patient, of all of our patients, requires that we know what's going on, medically. Are these temporary symptoms or permanent? At what point do the symptoms cease? Dr. Warren jumped in. Are there any factors compromising our patient's health? We need to know. He'd said the last with some force. Turner thought for a moment. I will address certain questions, but you understand that others will not be answered. In the emails exchanged between Craig Wesson and Chris Hansen comparing their changes, Chris came up with the term girl bomb, like a bug bomb. A cute nickname, and you two might be proud to know that we've adopted the term in-house. He gave his awful grin. Girl bomb, yes, I like that very much. As you've already speculated, it evolved out of a desire to, shall we say, pacify anti-American militants. I leave you to think about who or what that would entail. I said, is the girl bomb the end result? I mean, is it done and tested and you know the results? Like what Lisa and Tommy and I can expect? It came so easily to me to say Lisa now. A valid question. You're surprisingly sharp, he nodded at me with a crooked smile that chilled me. Your question is out of my original sequence, and I'll tell you that of course we're working on further methods and fine-tuning, so to speak, but yes, we essentially know the effects of the girl bomb. But it was a wonderful opportunity to field test it with a certain demographic under random circumstances when the three of you broke in. We snuck in, Lisa said. We didn't break anything, We walked in through an open door. Yes, well, their security was lax that night, he sniffed with derision. Dr. Sarkeesian said, I have not examined Chris here or the Donahue boy, but I'm assuming the effects of your girl bomb are similar or identical for all three boys? There was a quiet anger to her words. Yes, Dr. Sarkeesian. I noticed how he always used people's names, as if to show that he knew everything and everybody and held all the cards. Dr. Paulson said, well, can you enlighten us? We were just speculating on a DNA. He waved his hand. Flipper? I said. Turner smiled at me again, and I really didn't like that much attention. Well put again, Miss Hanson. You really do have a way with expressive words. First you came up with girl bomb and now, yes. A DNA flipper, not as cute as a girl bomb, but fairly accurate. Yes, that's largely what it does, and don't expect me to explain further. The subject contains X and Y chromosomes, male subjects, obviously, otherwise what's the point? And the girl bomb works at the cellular level to flip the Y. Thank you for the terminology, which essentially renders it an X. He waved a hand. Not scientifically accurate, but an easy-to-grasp explanation. Because we all start out with the X chromosome, we sort of start out as females, or at least half of every embryo, sort of, I said as a thought came to me. Easier to double the X? Like he'd said, not scientifically accurate but easy to grasp. Again, not scientifically accurate, but essentially right, Miss Hanson. And have you chosen a name yet, by the way? I slumped down in my seat from the intensity of his gaze, and my mother, God bless her, took my hand and squeezed it and said, her name is Christina, or will be. She looked at me and smiled and then turned back to face Turner defiantly and firmly said, no, it is. My daughter is Christina. Christina Hanson. Turner nodded. It suits her. And Mr. and Mrs. Donahue, I imagine with all the excitement today you haven't come up with a name for your new daughter? There was a sneer to his words. Mrs. Donahue said, no, we haven't, as you well know. We've only just discovered. She looked at me and smiled sadly before looking back to Turner. We've only just discovered what's going on. What you've done to my Tommy. Turner sniffed with derision. Actually, your Patrick was what was done to your Tommy, today, anyway. I've already been to the police station and spoken with him. My Patrick? Mr. Donahue finally roused. What have you done to him? Nothing, Mr. Donahue. I explained to the officers and Patrick that this matter was now under the control of Homeland Security. I can tell you a few things, though. The charges against Patrick will be dropped. Thank God. Mr. Donahue slumped back in his chair, looking at the ceiling. And? Mrs. Donahue said. There's always a catch with your type. What else? My type? Turner chuckled coldly, then nodded. Yes, perhaps. I wanted to tell you that you're going to have to accept the fact that Tommy Donahue is now becoming a girl. Totally and completely. Accept that fact and get on with your lives. Stop being a stupid Irish cliché. Stupid? Mr. Donahue automatically reacted. Yes, stupid, Turner spit out in a commanding voice that immediately stifled Mr. Donahue. To be so public in your prejudices. He shook his head. I'm not known for my kindnesses, so this is quite rare and you should pay attention. Mr. Donahue, I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice and you do well to listen. First, your son Patrick is dangerous. Whether it's your own doing or just something always within him, he's a killer waiting to emerge. Another evil grin. And I do recognize the type. The homophobic nature of his attack, well, you might want to look into anything he's repressing. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Dr. Sarkeesian said with bile. Not actually, no, Dr. Sarkeesian. Just agreeing to answer some questions. Back to Mr. Donahue, he said. Second piece of advice. Through no fault of his own, criminal trespass, of course your other son Tommy is no longer male. She is female and you must get that through your head. Treat her as a female, as your daughter, and I hope you do a damned better job with her than you did with her brother. The third piece of advice is, I heard your wife's comments from our command station outside as we monitored your video feeds. She's a strong, smart, loving woman and you should count yourself lucky that she bothers herself with you. So my advice is to let her raise your daughter and you both try to undo the damage you've done to Patrick. End of advice. There was stunned silence all around. He seemed smug. Can we please ask some medical questions? Dr. Warren said, partly to take the spotlight off the Donahues, who were squirming in their shame. Not too many. But I'll tell you the gist of what you probably want to know, and then we'll wrap up here. All 3 of your patients have been thoroughly dosed and are responding quite well within known parameters. To use Christina's vernacular, the girl bomb has flipped their DNA. Over the weeks, all traces of and effects of Y chromosomes are being removed from their bodies. This is a permanent condition, as there's nothing productive by introducing a Y chromosome to females, and once gone the Y doesn't regenerate or reproduce. Instead, the cells go on their way, happily reproducing as if they'd always been XX. Permanent? Lisa said. So I'm a girl for the rest of my life? Tommy and Chris, too? Yes, Lisa, Turner said. Thank God. Lisa sighed. I just couldn't go back. Nor will you. Or you, Christina, Turner said to me. And whatever name the Donahues come up with for their new daughter. What about, genitalia? Dr. Paulson said. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, Turner did the evil grin again. As the girls, for that's what they are now, as the girls are in puberty, their breasts are growing. And their male genitalia is shrinking, or forming into what will eventually become vaginas. There seemed to be a strange joy in how he'd said that last part. Involuntarily, I shivered. The diarrhea that Chris and I had? Lisa asked. Your internal male organs that are no longer needed, as you assumed. Expect more of it, I'm afraid. Again with the ugly grin. He almost breathed the last word, chunks. So, vaginas? I asked, wondering if I'd push him too hard. Turner spun to me and for a split second I saw a change in his blithely confident face, the tiniest of narrowed eyes. It was just for a moment and then his face slid into placid superiority. He'd paused slightly and I realized he'd been about to say something but had changed his mind at the last minute as he'd regained control. Yes, vaginas, Miss Hanson. At one point in your email you referred to the Hollywood special effect known as morphing. Fairly accurate, as most of your conjectures have been, Miss Hanson. Your genitalia is morphing into the state it would have been had you been born female. With the Y influence gone, your body is returning to its embryonic, female state, only one that is 13 or 14 years along, as the cells catch up, you might say. To restate the point, you 3 are becoming the females you would have been if you had been born XX. When is the process concluded? Dr. Paulson said. He waved a hand airily. Probably the first time your patients menstruate, you can pretty much determine that the girl bomb has run its course. Teresa Wesson could be heard chuckling. She's gonna get periods, too? Geez. Don't get so excited, Terry, Lisa playfully grumbled. Mom squeezed my hand again. I cleared my throat. Will I be able to bear children? A wonderful question, Miss Hanson. You really are right on top of things. So far none of our test subjects has become pregnant, but it's been only a very short testing time. He grinned wickedly. You'll find out. There was a shocked moment around the table and I spoke again. It seems like my mind is changing. My brain, I mean. Like I'm being rewired how I feel and think about things. Turner nodded. As already proven, you have an admirable ability to define concepts in a single word, Miss Hanson. Rewired is an apt term, another would be chemically altered. Male and female brains have different neural pathways and yours is reconfiguring along female lines. If you are subjected to a brain scan, your brain activity will be squarely within female parameters. So, yes, in a nutshell, you will find thoughts and feelings and emotions that you haven't perhaps experienced before. An ugly grin. Including, I dare say, how you feel about the opposite sex. Which for each of you three is now the male sex. So you may be heterosexual females, drawn towards males, or you might be lesbians, drawn towards girls. He shrugged. It's however you were wired long ago, in your XX stage as embryos. So Tommy will be a fairy? Mr. Donahue blurted out. Hush! Weren't you listening? Mrs. Donahue hissed at him. Turner spun to Mr. Donahue. Tommy isn't Tommy anymore, you stupid man. He'll be whatever, well, I should say she'll be whoever you name her. Kathleen, Mrs. Donahue said softly. My daughter's name is Kathleen. An excellent choice, Turner said casually, as if he really didn't care. Kathleen? Mr. Donahue gasped. Shouldn't we talk about this? Shouldn't I have a say? I don't see why, the way you've been, Mrs. Donahue snapped. But in case you've forgotten, Michael Donahue, when I was pregnant we decided on Thomas or Kathleen. Well, however the good Lord fashioned it, we'll be using both names for our child. Kathleen, he repeated to himself and then shrugged. If it has to be. Turner snorted. I'd say you don't have any choice in the matter. So are we clear on this, everybody? Christopher Hanson, Craig Wesson, and Thomas Donahue ceased to exist as of this day. That's arbitrary, by the way, but as good a date as any. But no matter what stage they're at, when the girl bomb has completed its work, they will be Christina, Lisa, and Kathleen. And parents, your children are girls, they're females, and treat them accordingly. He startled everyone by clapping his hands together in a loud smack. I want to wrap things up fairly quickly. That concerns everyone's documentation and yes, doctors, that means you, too. First of all, as I said at the start, all documents here and on file will be gathered up by us. None of you are to speak about anything we've talked about, in part or in whole, or you will be punished to the full extent of the law under the Patriot Act. What about school records, church records, all that? Mrs. Donahue asked. It'll be taken care of by us. We already know where everything is, it's just a matter of changing things here and there. You can't just invent a whole new person. Mom said. Or obliterate another. Actually, we can, Mrs. Hanson. It's something we do. Be glad that it's the records that disappear and not the individuals. The thread hung in the air, silencing us. Then there was a little commotion going on from the video feed between the Wesson parents. Ask him, Mrs. Wesson said. It's not important right now, Mr. Wesson said, placating. Turner turned to face the camera setup. What is it? He said with an annoyed tone. Mrs. Wesson blurted out, I know the cost of a daughter and the cost of a son. We've had both and paid the bills. Now suddenly I have another daughter, but she's got nothing to wear, her room is a boy's room. Mr. Wesson tried to calm her. Honey, you don't deal with it. I know how much shopping for Teresa costs, and now it's doubled with Lisa, and after the move things are tight and the other families are going to have to spend more, too, for Turner barked. Enough. Thank you for your input. I was hoping I could appeal to your patriotism, but there's always that one among you. He sighed. Each family will receive the sum of $10,000. That is the total amount you will ever receive, no future claims will be honored. And it's generous, under the circumstances. Hush money, Mr. Donahue spat. It's your money to do with as you see fit. Consider it a bribe, if you want, Mr. Donahue. But it's wiser to consider what Mrs. Wesson has, quite practically, pointed out. We've found that rather than a bribe, the money offered will ease the financial burden imposed upon you, a burden that might cause you to seek additional compensation or try to, quite bluntly, sell your story. There are documents to sign. Turner broke off because there was some noise outside and a knock, and the door quickly opened. A smiling face stuck around the edge of the door. Hi, folks, sorry to interrupt. Is there a guy with a gray suit here? He was walking down the. He turned his head and saw Turner. Oh, hi, I guess it's you. The smiling guy came in, and there was a momentary look between the bully boy and Turner, who looked irritated but then nodded, and the bully boy stood back. Can I help you? Turner asked the smiling guy. The smiling guy was in a dark blue suit and his tie was out. He tucked it back in and his hand came out of his jacket with a folded paper that he handed to Turner. Somebody saw you drop this. Hope it's not too important. I was just heading down and she gave it to me to return to you. He shrugged. As he spoke, Turner had automatically taken the paper and casually glanced at it, then stiffened. The smiling guy suddenly stood straighter, dropped the smile, and his voice was instantly professional and firm. Franklin T. Adams, you have just been served and witnessed. You are to cease and desist any and all operations as of this moment and immediately report to Judge Arthur Stanfield. Color had drained from Turner's face and his jaw was twitching. In a tight voice he said, "There's been a mistake. I'm not Franklin Adams, I'm Agent John Turner. This Adams person must look a bit like me." An easy mistake for a process server to make, he added disdainfully, and then his voice hardened. And you're interfering with matters of homeland security. Yes, well, mistakes. The no longer smiling guy said dismissively. You haven't read further down. You'll also find your aliases, including John Turner, Walter Davidson, and several of your other names, Frank. He smiled now, but like a shark. And I'm not a process server. I'm Jack Allen, an attorney and officer of the court of Judge Arthur Stanfield. Judge Stanfield happens to be deeply concerned about the security of our nation and was displeased that required notification was not issued in this matter. He would like to see you immediately to clear it up. I'm sure you simply overlooked the notification process required by Article 64, Paragraph D, Subpara. All right, Allen. Let's go see your judge. Turner looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Turning to the room, he raised a warning finger and snarled, "This matter is not concluded. Everything said remains classified, and any attempts by any of you to hide or disseminate this information will be treated as we discussed, until I return after clearing up this." He sneered at Mr. Allen. Bureaucratic garbage. Am I clear? Everybody nodded, heads kind of down. I looked up and Mr. Allen, Jenny's dad, gave me a quick wink. Then he said, "I'm sure you have all the proper authority, but let's just go satisfy the judge and you and I can go back to what we were doing." He maneuvered the bully boy out the door first and then Turner, following quickly and closing the door, but not before we saw the doorway lit up with strobe lights and heard shouts from a crowd and a bellow of rage from Turner before the door closed. "Media," Dr. Warren said, grinning. "He had the press out there ready and waiting." Mom said, "Secret activities by unknown groups, people like Turner or whatever his name is, they can't stand the light of exposure." "His name really is Frank Adams," Lisa said from the TV. "God, Frank Adams." She said it with awe, like saying a rock star's name. "Is he somebody, Lisa?" I asked. I thought the name was rather bland, but maybe that was the point. "Chris, he's like a legend among the men in black." "Like the guy said was that Jenny's dad?" "Old Frank's got a million names, but wow. We met Frank Adams." "And lived to tell about it," the female lawyer said. "Don't count on them being able to restrain him, but I'd guess that the public exposure will pretty much limit any further damage he can do to you." She turned to Sergeant Rodriguez. "Did you get it?" Sergeant Rodriguez nodded. "Got it all," she said, reaching up and clicking the black plastic thing on her shoulder. "Oh my God." Lisa burst out. "You were recording all that? How didn't he notice?" Sergeant Rodriguez smiled and nodded at the lady lawyer. "She made a little note on her BlackBerry, showed it to me, then wiped it." "The dropped glass," I said. Sergeant Rodriguez smiled at me and nodded. I leaned over and grabbed the glass with one hand and turned on my recorder with the other. I made sure my hands were in plain sight after that. "This new model," she turned and sort of looked at the gadget next to her face, "is a real beauty." I put it on silent mode so we didn't get talkback. But it recorded audio and video directly into the server at the police station and a backup on a thumb drive in my utility belt. Dr. Paulson said, "I noticed how you sometimes turn stiffly and I idly wondered if it was a job-related injury." She grinned. I was worried about being too obvious about it, but I had to get the video feed on, although I have no idea how well they photographed. "So," she shrugged. "We have a record of everything that was said in here." "Actually," Lisa said with a tone that I remembered Craig used to have when he had some incredible news bursting out of him. "Actually, Sergeant, we have more than that. Right from the start when he showed up, God, Frank Adams. I set up a program that recorded everything." "Brilliant, Lisa," I said. "But won't they just seize your hard drive?" "Oh, they could seize it," she grinned in the monitor. "But I also set it up to stream the broadcast to several websites and vlogs I know." Her grin widened. "It'll also hit YouTube." "God, then it'll be all over the internet." I blanched. "Our names, and oh, God. And us talking about our shrinking penises and everything." "No worries. I set it up for those guys to hold the footage so I can edit out the parts about us." "Names and penises," she grinned. "Gonna start as soon as we log off here, and it should be edited and posted in a couple of hours. Probably be online about the time Frank's finally back on the street after seeing that judge." Her grin widened. I said, "Lisa, are you sure that we're not going to be splashed all over the internet?" Lisa smiled warmly. "I know you're worried, Chris, I get it. I'm really happy now and I don't want to turn my life into a media circus, or yours or Tom Kathleen's." "Great name for her, too, Mrs. Donanu," she called out. "Back to me," she said. "Look, these websites don't care about us, they want to fry Frank Adams. The main thing is that he experimented on American citizens without their knowledge and I'll bet without consent of higher authority, or Congress, or whoever he answers to. It's what he did that's criminal and of interest, not who he did it to. And there's no sense trashing Intellia if they're innocent, too, which is how it seems." How did you set all this up so fast? Mom asked. Did you know Turner was going to appear? It's always been a possibility, Mrs. Hanson. Chris and I have discussed it. By the way, is she really Christina now? To you, I mean? Absolutely, Mom smiled confidently, hugging me. Yep, I said happily and proudly and putting my hand on Mom's. I smiled at Lisa in the monitor. But my friends call me Chrissy. Lisa nodded. He was right, it suits you. So, yeah, Mrs. Hanson, back to your question. Did you notice there were stretches where you didn't hear from us? Mom smiled, probably because Turner was so pleased with himself and the sound of his own voice. Yeah, that too, Lisa grinned. Well, I muted our audio feed, only opening it when we had something to say. That way they couldn't hear the clack of my keyboard. And my keyboard's not on camera, so they couldn't see me typing. I'm a pretty good touch typist, so I didn't have to look. So I was frantically writing all that stuff and getting the other guys online. She giggled. It was actually more fun than any video game. August 15th, I spent part of the day at the lake with Jenny Allen and Lainey Blackwood, and then had dance class. After class, Lucy Cho and I hung out at the mall until closing. It's been a fun day, partly because the new bikini I wore at the beach is so tiny that guys were walking into things. It's so cute, yellow with a hot pink trim that makes it kind of vibrate. I had my leotards with me, so after Mom picked me up I changed for dance. I can almost do full splits now, and I'm trying to lean forward in splits, too. Lucy came home with us. She's new to the area and we just hit it off, and now we do lots of things together. I love her personality, and her skin is gorgeous, not to mention straight black hair that's almost blue, it shines so much. She moved here from outside Chicago, and although Lainey's not really spent any time with her, Lucy and Jenny hit it off and all three of us hang together. Mostly hanging at the mall, shopping, movies, and cruising boys. Lucy and I showered and changed. She brought her bag with her and is spending the night. She wore super low-cut tight jeans and a red textured top, and I wore a short pleated gray plaid skirt and a black top of tight lace that has a deep neckline. I love showing cleavage, something Mom's on my case about. And we both had high heels, not great for walking the whole mall, but if we stand around talking with some cute boys, who's walking? We'll all be in high school together this year, and I can't wait. I don't have any problems with having been Chris and now being Chrissy. Just like Lisa, she's already got a boyfriend, and I can't believe how sexy she looks all the time. Gee, a sexy computer nerd, who'd have thought it? I don't care that much about video games like I used to, because all of my computer time is taken up with Facebook with my girlfriends. Although, I do spend a lot of time tracking conspiracy stuff, too. Jenny's dad got me interested in it and involved in a couple of groups that are like those guys on the old X-Files TV show, always researching. So here's how things all shook out after the events of June 21st. As we expected, the whole Black Hat operation couldn't stand the light of exposure and sort of imploded, like the house at the end of Poltergeist. Just shrank to a little black nothing and pop, it was gone, in terms of the media. Not a single mention in the newspaper, but we'd never really expected that. An edited version of the evening was put up on YouTube that night and removed the next morning, but there were apparently video sites all over the world that carried the footage and remained up and running. I'd been so tired after that night that by the time I awoke the next day, the YouTube version was gone, but Lisa sent me a copy and she's got a future in film editing. None of our names, including doctors, lawyers, and Sergeant Rodriguez, were heard. Our faces were blurred, although Lisa and I were unmistakably female, and details like the town's name were obscured, so it came across that this had been done to unknown American citizens in any town, USA. That made it even more shocking that any kind of outrageous experimentation could be happening anywhere, at any time, under the name of Homeland Security. It made the video even more damning and effective. Turner or Adams or whoever he was just vanished, probably onto a new scheme with new names. We didn't expect him to be held accountable, or even held, really. He walked out of the judge's chambers and into the night. However, there was some fallout in a good sense, for the most part, and that's what was interesting. By the way, Intellia hadn't known what was going on, only that they were helping Homeland Security. It didn't do them any good. Their company was absorbed by another company and their name went away and their games went into limbo. It happens in software. Turner had promised us $10,000 per family. I don't know if it was pressure from Mr. Allen, who is a great guy and really doesn't like spooks like Turner, but we were discreetly approached with a different offer. Some company a front for a government agency, Lisa and Jenny both agree, appeared and asked us to write our experiences. Put everything in, they said, any length. I had already started this journal and wrote it up to the point where I turned it over to them, ending back in June. Then they got the originals and all copies from everybody, except for the ones that Lisa and I stashed, which is how this journal survives, with this August entry. Upon receipt of all materials, each family received, unbelievably, $100,000. I'm sure the Donahues sniffed and called it hush money, but it could certainly buy a lot of hush. They also gave a one-time offer to help in relocation should anyone care to move. Lisa and her family are perfectly happy where they are, and Terry and Lisa are having a ball shopping together and just enjoying being sisters. Since they'd already moved, she is only known as Lisa Wesson to everyone, and her school records were altered in the transmission to her new school. And, of course, Dr. Sarkeesian is one of us now and knows about the whole thing. So the Wessons didn't need any relocation funds. And the $100,000 would certainly calm down Mrs. Wesson. Lisa's doing great, in fact greater than great, like I said. She's got a boyfriend. The video hookup between us now is much better, and she looks fantastic and he's a hottie. I just hope she doesn't get him caught up in mad schemes like Craig did. Tommy is a different story, with sadness and hope. I went with Mom and the Donahues and Dr. Warren to explain everything to Tommy, who turned his face away from us and sobbed. We left and I came back alone a couple of hours later and he was all sobbed out. Tommy spoke with me, with his new, girlish voice. He said he'd sobbed not because he was turned into a girl. He'd been sobbing so hard with relief, because he'd thought it was his fault, somehow. In fact, he thought it meant he could spend more time with his mom. His face was all bandaged and wired because of the broken side of his face, and his hands were bandaged and he was in some kind of metal gadget that kept him in place so he didn't tear the zillion stitches. Dr. Warren said it was really interesting working with Tommy because he wasn't just healing, his body was also transforming. Staying on top of the changes in Tommy's size and metabolism was a challenge. The girl bomb certainly altered our DNA to female, but it was confirmed by the geneticist when they finally tracked him down that by all possible yardsticks, we were becoming exactly who or what we would have been if born female. In his words, the unique combination of genes from the mother and father that would create us dictated how we looked as females. If we'd been genetically primed to be short and fat, we'd be short and fat. If we'd been genetically primed to be nearsighted and bony, that's how we'd be. So we really, truly were our parents' daughters. For Lisa, that meant that she got a bit shorter, into typical girl height, and she got way prettier, like her sister Teresa, with long wavy hair. She's gotten rid of the wig and had extensions until it's all her own. Oh, and she doesn't wear black all the time as Craig did, she's added red, pink, and gray. As Christopher, I couldn't tell you if Craig or Tommy were good-looking guys. I guess Craig was, but Lisa is a hot babe. For me, small as a boy, I lost some height, couldn't afford to lose too much. But I'm a classic petite now, 5'2", eyes of blue, and so on. Clothes are not a problem fitting, like they were for Christopher, and I'm discovering that I'm a girly girl, just like Jenny said. I'll wear Hollister and American Eagle like all of my girlfriends, but I'm more skirts and tops and accessories than jeans and a hoodie. For Tommy, though, the whole process was major. He'd been tall for a 14-year-old and bulky like his father and brother. But his mother's genes were stronger with females, I guess, so he had a lot of shrinking to do. It had been extremely painful and was one of the reasons he pretty much locked himself in his room. And of course his breasts developed and his penis was shrinking, although that might not have been as noticeable when the rest of him was shrinking so much. But it was a hell of agony and fear. Once his voice broke again, sliding up into his girl's range as his larynx altered and reduced in size, he was too frightened and too embarrassed to call me or Craig. Poor Tommy thought all of this was happening to him alone, despite the things we'd told him. I guess it was because we hadn't taken the plunge into girlhood the last time we talked to him. We were kind of sliding into the shallow end of the pool, so to speak. We'd shown our breasts to each other, but I guess he thought that Craig and I had stopped there while he continued on, becoming more and more of a girl, all alone. There was one other matter, and that was the part where our brains were being rewired since Turner liked my terms so much and we began having girlish thoughts. It hurts to think of Tommy, hurting so badly as his body mutated in the darkness of his room, having no idea how far it was going. Then Tommy starting to think about boys the way Lisa and I did, and do, as attractive members of the opposite sex? I know Tommy had a TV in his room. Was he sitting there watching TV and starting to get turned on by cute boys? If so, and it probably happened, it just would have increased his misery and fear. So poor Tommy will probably need lots and lots of therapy to overcome the shame and humiliation he felt, all alone, as his body betrayed him. Of course, Tommy's brother betrayed him, too. Turner's snide remark about Patrick's homophobic rage rings true to me, at least the rage part. Maybe he has gay tendencies, but I don't think that's it. I don't think his attack was homophobic as much as it was trying to kill a personal demon. Tommy had shrunk quite a bit and was not the big strapping kid he'd been, and his face was softening into a girlish version of his pretty mother. Also, his black hair from his father was lightening into a reddish brown that's a cross between his two parents' hair. Then throw in the fact that he was developing breasts, curves, and was naked and wet in a towel. For whatever reason, Patrick ripped the towel off as a joke, to show his parents, or just to see for himself what was going on. I suspect that Patrick was aroused, as they say. I think he found himself reacting as a horny male to a soon-to-be pretty female, who looked like a girl, shrieked like a girl when she was exposed, and all the time Patrick's brain was screaming, "You're turned on by your little brother," and he couldn't handle the overload, and snapped. That's my theory, anyway. Turner or whoever was covering up for him did make the charges go away, but they got Patrick into anger management therapy, probably the best thing for him, and no mark on his record. In a very, very odd way, we have Patrick to thank for how things turned out. I wouldn't have Tommy go through his agony for anything, but it was Patrick's attack that got all of us together and flushed out Turner, or Adams, or whatever he calls himself now. Mrs. Donahue has moved out with Kathleen once she got released from the hospital, and together they've moved to stay with Mrs. Donahue's sister upstate. Supposedly it's just until Kathleen is fully recovered from her injuries, and also fully transitioned to girlhood, and Patrick is fully transitioned to not being a knife-wielding crazy. Then they hope to patch things up between their family, and if Mr. Donahue is even halfway smart, he'll follow Turner's advice and submit to Mrs. Donahue. Most likely, Mr. Donahue will be spending time with Patrick, and Kathleen will want to be with her mother as the family heals. But Mr. Donahue will learn to love his daughter as he loves his wife, and if Patrick can learn and grow, they'll do better as a family of equals. I saw Kathleen the day she was released. There were still bruising and sutures, but she was pretty and actually smiling. She was so changed, the most of any of us, that I wouldn't have known her as Tommy. There wasn't any logical connection except for the amazing girl bomb. Her mother had found a curly reddish wig to cover her very short hair. Tommy had always kept his hair military short, and I could see that Kathleen will be quite attractive. Much taller than me, of course everybody is. But still within typical girl height. And once she's fully healed, she'll probably be even prettier than her mom, and that's saying something, because with the family tragedy behind them, Mrs. Donahue was blossoming and no wonder Mr. Donahue married her. And she's not just a beauty, she's a strong, wonderful woman, too, but had been too scared for too long. So Lisa and Tommy had moved away, and Mom and I moved, too, sort of. We took the offer up on relocation assistance, but only moved across town to a wonderful little 2-bedroom craftsman that we just loved, with hardwood floors and a glorious stone fireplace. The reason for the move was that it was in a different school district. All the middle schools and junior highs dumped into 4 different high schools in town, in different districts, and so I'm close enough to still get together with Jenny and Mom can still work at St. Joe's but far away enough that nobody will know me at the high school I'll start next year, and I will be just another new girl, in every way. And that's the final part of the journal, being a new girl. Mom hit the nail on the head about having the body but not the culture. There was so much to learn at first about how girls interact with each other and with boys and pecking orders and quilting groups and all of that psychological stuff. Jenny's been my guide, my angel, because my other close friend Lucy doesn't know that I was ever a boy. How could I be? She's seen me naked at sleepovers and changing for swimming, not to mention tight leotards in dance class. So I learned from Jenny like an anthropologist learns from a native guide, which is what she was, in a way. And her dad's so cool. The relationship between Mom and me has never been stronger, or sweeter, or closer. I tell her and ask her everything, which often leads to a lecture, these days. Once I had my first period at the start of August, and what a messy, scary but exciting thing that was. We can pretty much assume that I can become pregnant. Nobody knows that for certain, and our doctors hammered out a deal with the Black Hats, with Mr. Allen brokering, that they'll be updated on the other, anonymous, victims of the girl bomb. Incidentally, it's got a long chemical name and a short 3-letter code, but pretty soon everybody was calling it the girl bomb, thank you very much. July was the month I got my vagina. I started the month with a tiny penis and over the weeks it kind of disappeared inside me. Peeing was an adventure for a bit, because I never knew where it was going to spray until it stabilized to normal parameters, as Dr. Paulson described it. There was a night of what felt like the most insanely intense case of jock itch, and by the time I finally woke, exhausted, the next day, I had an opening. Things morphed along on their merry way after that, but that hurdle had been cleared. By the end of the month I hadn't noticed any change in what I suspect is my complete vagina. And then the next week my first period came and we can pretty much agree that the girl bomb has run its course in me. I'm a 5'2" curvy girl, with long blonde hair. I went to the salon for a great style and lightning blue eyes, and delicate fingers. Pretty darned good legs. I look darned good in a bikini, too, and I can testify to that by various males' reactions to my body. My body reacts to good-looking males, too, and I can't wait to start dating in high school. All of which has earned me lectures from Mom about what girls need to do, what boys will expect, yada yada yada. But it's interesting having spent time as the opposite sex meaning boys, now, and I think I'll have a pretty good insight to the boys that come calling. And they will. I'm a girl now, and I'm finding that means that I'm seeing the world very differently than I had as a boy. For one thing, I look at relationships more than rank. I see movies and read books differently. Well, I see them and read them the same way, of course, but I feel them differently. Characters that weren't as important to me, like Princess Leia in Star Wars, have much more meaning to me now. Not just because of identifying girl to girl, but because girls feel the world and people differently. That became really apparent to me, and tied directly to my personal experience, when I read about a resurgence of the Taliban in Afghanistan and other places. It seems like every major religion, once it starts developing and gets a hierarchy and becomes established, seems to put women in second place or third place, and I've been reading a lot about this and thinking about it. Early Christianity had strong women in it. Remember that the male disciples ran away before the crucifixion, leaving the Marys at the cross. Muhammad founded Islam with the support of his wife and daughter and women around him. Yet once the religion started getting structured with priests or rabbis or mullahs or whatever, women suddenly became secondary citizens. And in several cases, women became perceived as a source of evil. Then, at some point, the religions tend towards fundamentalism. Not the religion itself, but a faction within it. A small group, going off on its own direction, which reminds me of Turner and his group. One of the strange things I ran across was the point that, only in the late 19th century, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all started developing a small but vocal group with a fundamentalist viewpoint, demanding a return to a supposedly purer state of their faith that never actually existed. It seems that fundamentalism is, at its heart, a reaction against the modern world. The folks that go on about that old-time religion would be shocked to know that their narrow beliefs weren't known before the mid-1800s. Another strange thing is that there's a major new idea, an upheaval, that happens about 13 or 14 centuries after the religion was established. Judaism's so old that it's probably happened several times, but for Christianity, it was the Reformation in the early 16th century. For Islam, established in the early 7th century, 14 centuries takes us to right now, with groups like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban. Reading about the Taliban, which calls itself a pure form of their faith but seems to be mainly angry, horny teenage males with machine guns, it was brought home how hateful and fearful men can be towards women. The women living under Taliban rule are not schooled and are kept hidden at home, and outside they have to wear those head-to-toe black sacks, burqas. And yet, a gun-toting teen can say that a woman enticed him through a tiny eye hole? And can publicly whip her or even kill her. Madness. The reason I went on this rant is because of Turner's girl bomb. I don't believe any kind of biological warfare is allowable, but, hypothetically, I can't help wonder what would happen if a whole camp or a whole village full of Taliban yahoos morphed into females in a matter of months, as the girl bomb seemed designed to do. While it would be some sort of karmic payback for all the women they've whipped or slaughtered, it could never undo the pain or bring those women back to life. I mourn those women, and agonize over the mistreatment of women worldwide. I accept that I'm female now and I'm aware of the injustice towards women in the world, even the pay inequality in my own country, but it doesn't lessen my desire to be female. Of course, I'm biased now and think that being female is absolutely wonderful, so I think turning the terrorists into women is too good for 'em. And I don't believe that being female means not going to war. There are too many warrior women in history and in the world's armed forces to believe that. On top of that, a large number of suicide bombers have been women. Oh, yes, women are not going to drop their guns and go shopping, start baking, or any of the sexist cliches. Women can be plenty deadly. And let's face it, a woman can shoot a Kalashnikov as well as a man. Just a little squeeze of the trigger. It's like guys in the street gunning their motors to show their machismo. How much manliness is required to step 4 inches down on a gas pedal? Sheesh, you can do it in spike-high heels with pretty painted toenails and the engine will rev just as loudly. Yes, there are women of fundamentalist groups who firmly believe the nonsense their men spout, never challenging, never thinking for themselves. I can only hope they could retain their faith but become enlightened to some degree. I think of Tommy's mother, a wonderful loving woman who lived in fear for too long while her child was brutalized. She reached the point where she had to take a stand, to declare herself, to save her child and ultimately herself. The family is healing, but they're healthier, and with a better future than they had while dominated by Mr. Donahue's old-fashioned beliefs and bullying. I hope that fundamentalist women may experience the deliverance that the Donahue family experienced, and not live in fear as second-class citizens. But I wonder about the beliefs these guys cooked up about absolute male supremacy, after the girl bomb gets them, as they develop as females and find their minds rewired and everything else. Would they modify their beliefs? Certainly it would be fantastic if it reduced their desire to blow things up, but I'm more concerned about enlightenment. About equality, humanity, about reality. Would they finally allow women to be educated, to be able to go out dressed like human beings and not like sacks of potatoes, to be full members of their society, and all the rest that modern women do? Would the light of sanity cut through the dark craziness of their fanaticism? These are some of the things that I now think about. Being a girl is not all about malls and cute boys checking me out in my bikini. It's also about making my own way in the world, as a female, as a human being, and doing what I can for others. But despite my heavy thinking, all in all, I'm a happy, healthy, fairly well-adjusted almost 15-year-old girl. No matter how strange a path I took to get where I am, I'm content. Craig, Tommy, and Christopher all survived and, I'm pretty sure, are better for our experience. I've got great friends and I'm close to my wonderful mother, and we've got a new home and money in the bank, and if I had to do it all over again or be a boy, I'd want to be who I am, spiritually, emotionally, and genetically my mother's daughter, Christina Marie Hansen.